It never did quite cross my mind that Rode actually was holding back with the Wireless Go 2. I thought that more or less was its final form, but apparently this is the Wireless Pro. Not called the Wireless Go Pro for, I presume, legal reasons, but this is a hugely improved system compared to any of the previous Wireless Go products, and quite bluntly, it's what I think a system like this should be. Physically, the Pros are ever so slightly thicker than the Go 2s, but you would definitely be forgiven for saying they are the same size. Even in terms of weight, they are only a few grams heavier. I'm actually quite surprised that they aren't much bulkier. That does mean accessories like the Interview Go still work, but if you're thinking about sharing charging cases, unfortunately, the Type-C ports don't exactly line up. But the charging case is one of the most welcome additions with the Pro. It's really taken a while for Rode to introduce their very own charging case, but it's finally here now, and it's included with the Wireless Pro kit as standard. The case houses a 4,200 mAh battery, and that's enough to hold 2 additional chargers for the entire system. Having standby juice out in the field is one thing, but charging the entire system with just one Type-C power supply instead of 3 is the real reason the charging case makes so much sense. I think it's a nice touch that the units power on automatically once you remove them from the case, and when you put them back in, they power down as well. One thing I wish they designed a little differently was if they gave it just a bit more space for accessories in the charging case. When you shut the lid, it's just exactly enough room for the receiver and 2 transmitters. No extra room for accessories. Those accessories come in a separate, equally big accessory case. Now, this is just my preference, but I would prefer one big case with everything in it instead of 2 smaller cases. That way I can just grab that one kit and be on my way. And say if I packed with me only the charge case, the transmitters have built-in mics, so that's fine, but I would still need a cable to connect the receiver to my camera. You could, in practice, squeeze one cable into the charge case, but really just barely. Still, props to Rode for including just about every single cable you would need with the Wireless Pro. It also includes 2 lavalier 2s and 2 MacClick Go's. There are so many accessories included, it's actually tremendous value in accessories alone. In terms of actual hardware now, the biggest change is on the transmitters. Compared to the Wireless Go 2s, there is an additional button on the top of the unit dedicated to triggering the onboard recording. That's bundled with an LED indicator, which shows nothing but the recording status. If it lights up red, it's recording. Otherwise, it's not. This offers so much more clarity over the Wireless Go 2, which does this flash pattern with its 2 blue LEDs to show its recording status. Also, shout out to the dedicated power status LED on the bottom of the unit. The 3.5mm input is also now a locking jack. On the receiver, button layout and screen size remain the same, but the UI has been completely overhauled to accommodate all the new features on the Pro. Then here comes the golden question. Does it sound better? Throughout the video, you've been listening to the Rode Lavalier 2 recording into a Rode Wireless Pro transmitter. This, in my opinion, gives you the most polished look when miking someone using this kit, but it also matters that we talk about the onboard microphones built into the transmitters. Again, comparing against the Wireless Go 2, visually they look exactly the same from the outside, but the Wireless Pros do indeed sound audibly better versus the Go 2. Here I'm comparing them based on their internal recordings. They're both rolling at their respective highest quality codecs. The sound from the Pro's internal mic sounds fuller and less harsh compared to the Go 2s. I find the difference to be particularly pronounced in the lower frequencies, and it does make me wonder if they've got different capsules here in the Pro, or it's just better processing. Either way, I am much happier with the audio coming out of the Pro. Despite using the same Series 4 wireless transmission as the Wireless Go 2, Rode is advertising a range increase of 60 meters on the Wireless Pros. Still, I don't imagine range to be a particular strong suit of a system like this because, let's be real, it's 2.4 gigahertz transmission and its antennas are concealed, housed within a relatively small and compact housing. Still though, when you have line of sight and there's no interference around to mess with your transmission, you do get a very workable, very long range, probably longer than you'd ever need for most compositions. Still though, it really doesn't take much for something to get between that signal and... And here's when I argue that range is perhaps the least important feature of the Wireless Pros because the system's best features lie within its internal recordings. 32-bit float, for example, and in case you haven't heard, 32-bit float is kind of like a free pass for being careless with your gain. If you clip a recording because you set your gain too high, just pull it down in post and everything's all good. You could technically still distort the audio if you say yell into the mic point blank, because then the transducer's distorting, but this means hugely improved dynamic range over the previous Wireless Go's, which had a tendency to struggle with higher amplitudes. With the Pros, I can speak really quietly, or really give it some dynamics, and it's able to hold all that dynamic range. Now, the 32-bit float benefits apply only to the internal recordings, but for recording into a camera, we finally get granular control over input gain for the transmitters. You can dial this in remotely from the receiver's UI, and this is something which I've been hoping for since the very first Wireless Go. There's also Gain Assist, which is Rode's automatic gain feature. The very first time we saw this was back in the Wireless Me. And on the output side of things, the Pro also has quite a bit more to offer. If you cycle through the UI on the receiver, there's a page for choosing the type of output. What's noteworthy here is the headphone mode. The Wireless Pro receivers have an amp powerful enough to drive headphones from the 3.5mm output jack. This could be very useful if, say, you're outputting audio via USB to something like a smartphone. You can then plug in a pair of headphones for monitoring. It will keep defaulting to a low volume so you don't blow your ears out. That I really appreciate. And just remember to set your output type back to camera mode if you're going to plug that back into a camera again. For that mode, you can adjust the output gain in 3 decibel increments, just like the Wireless Go 2. Another headline feature for the Wireless Pros is support for timecode. Now, I think it needs to be explained that the timecode capabilities on the Wireless Pro serve only to facilitate syncing your camera to the transmitter's onboard recordings. The Wireless Pros cannot function as a timecode box in the traditional sense. They cannot be jammed to an external timecode source. The master clock in the system can only be the Wireless Pro receiver. The timecode features will only be active once you enable them in Rode Central, after which the transmitters will have the timecode data written directly into the metadata of the recordings. The receiver can output timecode via LTC in one of the audio channels to your camera, but you can also configure it to output just a pure timecode signal. One big thing to take note of though is because the timecode is generated on the receiver, then synced to the transmitters once they're in range, the transmitter recordings must be initiated while they are in range of a receiver. If you trigger a recording on the transmitter when it's not connected to the receiver, then the recording will not contain any timecode data. You also need a cabled connection to a phone or computer running Rode Central to configure the frame rate of the timecode. But again, you can see that the two biggest improvements on the Wireless Pro, 32-bit float and timecode, are really here to benefit the use of onboard recordings. To keep up with the bigger file sizes that come with 32-bit float, the internal storage for each Wireless Pro receiver has also been bumped up to 32 gigabytes each. Back on the Wireless Go 2s, it was only 4 gigabytes each. So there really is a lot going for the Wireless Pros in terms of audio quality, features, and included accessories to really justify its slightly higher price point over the Wireless Go 2. Actually, when you think about it, the two lavalier 2s included with the Wireless Pros retail for $99 each. If you get a Wireless Go 2 for $300, it doesn't come with any lavs nor a charging case. So if you bought a Wireless Go 2 with 2 lavs and a charging case, you would be spending close to $600, and it still won't be as good as a set of Wireless Pros for $399. Hence, in my opinion, if you're looking to get a set of wireless microphones, then the Wireless Pro is a no-brainer in terms of value.